she's speaking to the translator. I'm asking questions though in English, and she's responding before the translator translates. So I'm like, I know this woman doesn't know English. I get a call from a woman who was like, John, what are you doing right now? I'm like, nothing. What's up? She's like, the Saints are mad at you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So that would intensify that, a spirit would show up. It looked like a demon figure, a person in a hood. And I'm like half awake, half asleep. And then they would grab you and you get this like tingly feeling through your whole body. You can't move.
Ruslan.
From being an independent musician to dabbling in Santeria witchcraft and even the cam business, I have author John Clash with me. We're talking about his new book, The Law of Attraction, and how it's a gateway drug to the new age. Mr. John Clash, you're here.
What's up, brother? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so let's get into your story for folks who don't know a bit about you. Obviously, I know you from YouTube.
Yep.
We've hung out in person a handful of times. But folks who've never heard of John Clash, give us a little bit about your story, starting in music and all the other wild stuff.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to condense this as much as possible.
And I'll poke and pry where I see fit.
It's totally cool. So just to start off, I didn't grow up in the church, right? We did the whole cultural Catholic thing. My parents sent me to like CCD, but I think that was just to appease my grandmother, because we didn't talk about God in the house at all. And that was kind of the extent of it. And then since we didn't talk about God in the house, I never really thought about God. And I was pretty much that way till I was 28 years old. But before that, my parents got divorced. We moved to Yonkers, New York, and that's kind of where everything...
Shout out to DMX and the Locks.
Yeah, get at me, dog. But it was... that's kind of where my life took a turn for the worst, right? Although I'm appreciative of growing up in that environment, I just think with the divorce and, baggage that I have carried since I was a child, I was sexually abused when I was a kid. So I just was an angry dude. And then moving into Yonkers, New York, getting put in the public school system where now I'm around gangs, I'm around, and it wasn't the worst. It wasn't even the worst school in Yonkers. And it was still like, what the heck am I here for? I was fighting like every week in school. So I kind of just got this chip on my shoulder and was like, all right, I'm gonna be the baddest dude out here. I think it was after my brother's bike got stolen for like the third time. I was like, nah, we're not doing this anymore. So had the chip on my shoulder and I kind of carried it like a badge of honor. I was really angry my whole entire life. And my view of God was, I liked the aesthetics of God, right? Like angels versus demons and this, that. I even put it into my music in some times. But I never fully subscribed to it. I would say I was more agnostic and hostile towards God because I figured if God exists, one, he's doing a bad job, and two, I'm probably going to hell anyway, so who cares? You know what I mean? And that's how I pretty much was for a long time. And then I got introduced to Santeria, right? Which
There's like some symbolic imagery with Catholicism in
Yeah.
Santeria, but it's also not Christian. It's like witchcraft.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing.
It is. It's confusing for people who have never been a part, or me. I was an outsider because it's really big in the Hispanic and Latino community. So I had a lot of Hispanic friends, Dominican, Puerto Rican, and they invited me one time saying, "John, you got to come. This lady's gonna tell you your future." And I may not have believed in God or like really too supernatural stuff, really agnostic towards it. But I did always want somebody to tell me that if you like read my palm or something, that I'm going to be a famous rapper. That's what I wanted. So I was always open to,
you and me both, bud.
yeah, right? So I would, I would go to psychics like in Atlantic City if I'm walking the boulevard and see it. I remember this one lady told me, "Oh, you're going to work with your hands your whole life." I was so mad, so mad. But so I was open to that kind of stuff. So my friend invited me, and it was like a party when I showed up there. There was music playing, people were drinking, smoking. It was a party, but it was weirder because there was this altar in like the corner, right? And there was a few people there that I knew, but there was mostly people that I didn't. And I'm like, this is the most lit psychic experience that I've ever been at, because I'm still under the impression that this is just some like lady gonna tell me my future. I want to know if I'm gonna be a famous rapper. So the atmosphere kind of shifted, and I can't stand using that language because it's like, I feel like super hyper charismatic when I say that. But the atmosphere did shift, and I watched this lady who I knew all of a sudden start changing characteristics, right? Like she started, essentially, her personality changed is a better way to put it. And I'll explain what all this actually is after we get through the story. But so she started changing into these different characters. Some of them were more like she's laughing a lot and giggling and really playful. And she's drinking and smoking this whole entire time too. Cigars, not weed, just cigars. And she would sometimes like crawl on the floor like a baby, and other times she was really feminine. Other times she would be
all in
really
one
masculine.
party. This is all in one day.
So
There's a whole lot going on there,
bro. I'm sitting here, so you got to understand, man. The person who invited me was a Crip, right? I used to be like the token white boy of the Crips in my part of Yonkers. They never fully let me in, but I was the token white boy. So he invited me to this stuff. So me and him have done some way more bugged out stuff than me showing up at this party and having this lady do weird stuff. I've seen, he's put me essentially in way worse situations than this one. So I trusted him, and so I just went. And with all this stuff going on, I'm looking at it like, oh, this is bugged out. But you got to remember, I got no spiritual discernment too, because I'm an unbeliever at the time. And so anyway, she had these sashes, right? Kind of like a bandana, except they were silk and different colors. So anytime she would change characters, essentially, she would take a different sash and put it on. So I'm seeing all this going on, and I'm having a lot of fun because while she's doing this, she's going around talking to people as these different characters. She'll just like pull you out of the crowd and say, hey, I need to talk to you. Now, this is all in Spanish too. So at that time, I did not speak as much Spanish as I do now. But so I really didn't know what was going on too much because it was all in Spanish. But eventually she pulled me over. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is where, I'll be able to learn my future.
Sure.
So this lady who I know, right? But I just know her because she's related to the person who invited me.
Okay.
Right? I know that she doesn't speak English. And I know that she doesn't know much about my life. She knew that I wanted to be a rapper. Everybody did, right? But she pulls me over, starts speaking to me in Spanish, starts telling me about things that I never told anybody, like my sexual abuse when I was a kid, family members that died that nobody in the room knew who had died.
Yeah.
And then talking to me about, she described someone who looked like my father as being somebody who's been watching over me my whole entire life. My father's father died when my father was 12. So I'm like linking this stuff like, oh, how does she know this, right? So she's telling me all this bugged out stuff that I've never told anybody. So now I'm kind of hooked. I'm like, wow, what the heck is going on here, right? This lady's legit. That's what I'm thinking. And then long story short, she starts telling me things that she knows that I want, right? She's like, you want to be on stages, you want to be a famous rapper, you want women, you want this. We're going to give it all to you, right? And notice she said we, but this is one person talking, right? And while this is going on, while this exchange is going on, I have an interpreter, a translator, right? So she's speaking to the translator. I'm asking questions, though, in English, and she's responding before the translator translates. So I'm like, I know this woman doesn't know English. So how does she know what I'm asking to then answer the correct answer without the translator, So this is all this stuff going on is what's making me think that this is something real here that I need to pay attention to. Now, I came into this agnostic, right? So anyway, she says, we're going to give you all of this stuff. This is all you got to do. I had to wear these beads. I had to make an altar in my house, light some candles and stuff like that.
Whoa.
I know. So since I'm agnostic, I'm looking at this with one eye like, oh, wow, this is some crazy stuff. The other eye like, what's really going on here? But then I said, if what she's saying is true, And if I just light these candles and do this altar thing that she wants me to do, but I start getting the things that I want, okay. And if it doesn't work, whatever, I take the altar down.
Sure.
That was my first experience with Santeria. And so just to backtrack for those that are listening that may not understand what Santeria is, it wasn't until a few, I guess you could call them ceremonies or whatever, before I asked like, hey, what is going on here? What are we doing in this? So the woman who was explaining this stuff to me was like, every time she changes characters, she is being possessed by one of the saints, right? Like Saint John, Saint Bartholomew, like just all of the saints, right? So each one was a different Catholic saint that she was getting possessed by. So this is how they were telling me that this is good. You know, the saints, you don't think the saints wouldn't want good things to happen in your life? That's why they're able to offer it all to you. And you just have to do this for them, or you just have to do that for them, right? So as I said, I have no spiritual discernment, but when they're naming off the saints, I'm remembering the names from CCD, and I'm like, all right, well, if they're saying it's good, it's probably good, whatever. So what Santeria is it started off as from the Yoruba tribes in Africa. And each village kind of had their own deity that they worshipped. But when they were brought over in the transatlantic slave trade, you know, they weren't allowed to practice their religion. So they disguised these gods that they worshipped. They call them orishas. They disguised them as Catholic saints, so that way they could, so they could continue practicing their religion under the guise of like, oh yeah, well, we're just worshiping the saints.
So this is over hundreds of years.
Oh yeah, this is some old stuff, man. Some old stuff.
And where is it most predominant? Is it in Latin America?
Yeah. The Caribbean, you know, it's big in Brazil. But so here's the thing: as we
do they know that? Like, do the people who practice Santa Maria know that?
So I'm gonna bring that all back, right? So there's so many offshoots of this that we'll be talking about this right now, and you're going to see in the comment section later that like, oh, that's not Santeria, that's not what real Santeria is. There's so many offshoots of it that it's practiced differently in different cultures depending on what branch you're a part of.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's big in the Latino community as well, right? And they believe, and this is what I was told, I thought this was an offshoot of Roman Catholicism. And I had no idea that this was actually, this actually originated in like Yoruba tribes, right? So it was a long time before I learned that. I'm practicing all of this stuff, thinking in my head, like if what they're saying is true and this is the saints, then whatever, I could continue doing this. But then the seance, I guess we could call it a seance, right? It started getting weird. So there was this one that I went to where the lady who was doing it cracked a glass, right? Just cracked it on the floor, started picking up the pieces of glass and eating them.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I'm watching this and I'm just like, so here's the thing. Things that they said that was going to happen started happening. This is when my music was starting, you know, this was back in the mixtape days where you had to hand out mixtapes and stuff. But I was getting noticed by people. Like Jadakiss was talking, you know, I'm hearing through the grapevine that he wants to work with me. I'm actually in one of a music video with Jadakiss where I played like a tough guy, punched somebody in the face.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a fun. My boy Jay Nam was, he did a collab with Jadakiss and I was like the tough guy in it. Yeah. We filmed some of it in my apartment. It was a lot of fun. But so that's going on. Then I won Underground Music Awards, one for Artist to Watch, the other for Best Music Video of the Year. And so I'm seeing all these things.
And what year is this?
This was before 2012.
Okay.
Because that's when I got into home-based business and network marketing. So all of this, so it started years before that, and then it bled into it, right? So I'm seeing all this good stuff happening. So now I have this fear of loss, where if I stop lighting these candles, if I stop doing this stuff, will all this stuff disappear, right? So then I get a call one time when I was like kind of just coasting. I wasn't really paying too much attention to my altar and not really lighting the candles as much as I was before. And I get a call from a woman who was like, John, what are you doing right now? I'm like, nothing. What's up? She's like, the saints are mad at you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, they know that you're not taking care of your altar. And she was never in my house to like see that
Who was this woman?
I don't want to give her away, but somebody that is close to the person who invited me. You know, I just don't want to smear somebody. I haven't spoke to her in a long time. I don't know if she's even still involved. So she calls me and tells me this, and I'm like, all right, so what do I got to do? How do I fix this? Because now the fear of loss kicks in. So she's like, you have to have your own ceremony, right? So I spend all this money on all of this stuff, drinks, candles, these statues and everything, and we do my ceremony, right? And they did cleansings with me, like, you know, I had to like shower in this stuff. I don't remember what it was, just this concoction, you know, some really weird stuff they asked me to do, and so I'm like just trying to get back in the good graces.
Yeah, and throughout this year, there's never a part of you that's like, this is spooky, man. What are we doing? Like,
I know. I look back at it now and I'm just like,
because everything you're just describing it, like, I'm sure there's a lot of non-church goers and people that aren't like, yes, I follow Jesus and read the Bible and take it seriously, that would hear this stuff and be like, I don't know, man. This sounds kind of weird.
Well, I wasn't a believer. I also was using drugs at that time. Like, I was always drinking till I was drunk. It wasn't.
Okay. So you weren't in the best state.
I wasn't the most coherent.
Gotcha.
Back then, I was violent. I was angry all the time. I was also juiced up on steroids sometimes.
Oh, you on gear?
Yeah.
So you're on gear. So your testosterone's through the roof.
Oh my gosh.
And what other drugs are you doing at the time?
I'm doing like MDMA and mushrooms and LSD, and I didn't really smoke a lot of weed because it just made me super paranoid.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that, and then I was drinking a lot.
Got it.
So.
Okay. So you're doing
not the best.
You're doing a stack of steroids. Your testosterone's through the roof.
Yep.
And you're dabbling in like serious psychedelics.
Yeah.
Okay, well that would make sense why.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just
Keep
like,
That's
I'm a
crazy.
mess, bro.
Yeah.
I'm an absolute mess. God is so great. So anyway, after I do that ceremony or whatever, I ended up going on a date with somebody, and I was wearing my beads on the date. And the woman that I was with was like, "Oh, John, what are those beads?" And she's a Latina woman, so she's like, "What are those beads?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is Santeria, you know." And she's like, "Explain that to me." Now, in my head, this is how stupid I was. I'm like, "Oh, she doesn't like. I know more about her culture than she does. Oh, I'm about to school her. This can be a good night for me, right? This is what I'm thinking." And so I explain it to her, and she's like, "Yeah, those aren't saints, John. Those are demons."
Whoa. So you're like, yeah, it's like I'm a Catholic now. Yeah. And she's like,
Yeah, but I didn't even say like I was a Catholic. I didn't. Yeah. There was very minimal Jesus talk throughout this whole entire thing.
Well, that would also make sense.
Yeah, very minimal Jesus talk.
Yeah.
And also, if you ever said the word hell, I remember this one lady said, "What the hell?" during one of the ceremonies. The woman flipped out. Like she lost her mind at that. So just to backtrack, when she's being possessed by different like these different saints, quote unquote, it's called mounting, right? She is considered a caballo, which is a horse. That's a Spanish word for horse. And they mount her. And that's how they use her. But looking back on it now, I know she was just being possessed by demons. So this girl says this, like, "Yeah, those are demons, John." And I'm just like, this chick crazy.
You a hater.
Yeah.
You a hater.
Like, this chick crazy. But, you know, I played the part and was like, "Oh, thank you for telling me." She said, like, read this, and this in the Bible.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you what she said.
Yeah.
Right? But that planted a seed in my mind. And I continued doing it, right? And I was lighting the candles because I didn't want to lose the things that I had going on. So in this process, I eventually became a Christian. And, you know, that was like through apologetics and studying the origins of different religions. But I don't recall looking into the origins of Santeria because I'm thinking this some side thing that not a lot of people participate in, right? Sure. So, and then at that time, I was also into the law of attraction and manifestation. And
oh, wow. Okay. So these went hand in hand.
I'm living like two different lives. One, me being agnostic, like not really believing anything spiritual. Then I'm also living this life doing the Santeria stuff. And then I'm participating in New Age spirituality, but that was under the guise of like, it's science, because that's how they get you to start believing it. Law of attraction is science. So we'll get into that in a bit. But so I became a Christian, and I remember one day after an event in training, we were at Del Frisco's, and this guy who's still one of my spiritual mentors today, he's one of the people who really helped me in my walk with Christ. Dude's a multimillionaire, right? Multimillionaire. So at the time, I respected his opinion just because of his success, right? But he also, his father was a pastor, his grandfather was a pastor. They've been planting churches in Japan for like the past 100 years. So whenever he spoke about the Bible, I paid attention. I do not know exactly what he said. He was talking about the end times, right? And I don't know what triggered it, but I was like, I got to go home and destroy this altar, right? So I went home, destroyed the altar. I'm like, I rebuke you in Jesus' name. I don't know what I'm doing, you know, because I came to Christ through apologetics. I didn't really know a lot of the Bible, right? Which is also why I got into like prosperity gospel and stuff like that, just because I didn't know how to read the Bible. But at that point, I was like, no, I gotta get rid of this. So I broke everything, put some of it in the woods, you know, shattered the actual table that the altar was on. And I always got sleep paralysis pretty much my whole entire life. When I did that, sleep paralysis got super intense, right? And it was really intense for a long time. You know what sleep paralysis is?
I don't. Like you have trouble sleeping, basically?
No. So sleep paralysis is, people have it many different ways, but there's always an underlying theme of what happens in sleep paralysis is you'll kind of be in this halfway asleep, halfway awake state, and a figure.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I've had that before. That's spooky.
It's super. So it used to happen to me so much that it didn't even scare me anymore. It was just annoying to me, right? But so that would intensify. That you know, a spirit would show up. It looked like a demon figure, a person in a hood, and I'm like half awake, half asleep, and then they would grab you, and you get this like tingly feeling through your whole body. You can't move. You can't speak or anything until they're done doing whatever the heck it is they're doing.
Yeah, they never grabbed me in my sleep.
Yeah,
but I've had sleep paralysis like that. Yeah, that's spooky, man.
Yeah, super spooky. And this happened to me before I was a believer. Then it happened to me less when I was participating in Santeria, right? But so when I took down the altar and when I did all that, the sleep paralysis got worse. Like it was happening more often. I could go take a nap and I'm getting freaking sleep paralysis, right? And I didn't know what sleep paralysis was because as I was saying, I came in agnostic. So I'm thinking I'm just processing traumas. When you look up the secular reasoning for sleep paralysis, that's what they say. It's you processing traumas and you're being in this midway point between being awake and being asleep. But what's interesting is that if you look into it, the only thing that people say helps is saying the name Jesus when you have sleep paralysis. And that's when I learned that, that's how I was able to make it stop by using the name Jesus. So
that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, you feel like the sleep paralysis were demonic attacks?
100% it was. And I can attest to that because when I started leaving the prosperity gospels, stopped participating in law of attraction, stop like deading anything that was even closely associated to anything that is not Christianity, that it intensified, right? And then just, it was like a spiritual battle, but I was like, I'm not stopping. I'm going to continue learning. I'm going to continue talking to people about Jesus. I'm going to continue in this walk. And it eventually just stopped. I remember the last day that it happened, I was at my mom's house and I'm sleeping, like half awake, half asleep, and I'm like, oh, it's about to go down. Because now I could tell when it's gonna happen, right? And I'm seeing, it's so weird. It's like you could see in the other room, but you're in this room, but I could see in the other room. It's a weird thing. I can't really explain it too well. And I saw these two figures come up, and I'm like, oh, here it goes, boom, and they jump on me. And one's holding down my hand, one's holding on my neck, and I was able to lift my hand. I couldn't get Jesus out yet. Like I just couldn't get it out. And I'm able to lift my hand. And I was never able to do this in sleep paralysis before. And you can't see their faces, but you can kind of feel where they're looking. And I felt like they looked at each other. And I was finally able to get out Jesus, and then boom, that was it. Never happened again until my wife left the New Age, right? So she burned all her books, and this was before she was my wife, but she burned all her books, and that night I got sleep paralysis. So I reached out to Stephen Bancars. You know who Stephen Bancars is? All right, he stopped doing YouTube, but back in the day, like 3 years ago, he did a lot of stuff debunking New Age and talking about like the fallacies in Christ consciousness, dealing with the demonic and all of that. So I reached out to him. I'm like, bro, is this normal that now that the woman that I'm interested in just burned all these New Age books, I started getting sleep paralysis again. He's like, yeah, it's normal. He's like, just stay the course. It should stop. And happened like a couple times, and then never again. So now I am sleep paralysis free.
Delivered.
Yeah, I'm delivered, right? So on that subject, I got into seeking out deliverance ministries, and I was listening to a lot of Derek Prince and John Ramirez, and because not only was that happening, the sleep paralysis and stuff, but my life was in shambles. And I'm thinking with this kind of prosperity mindset of, I thought that if I start believing in Jesus, my life is going to get better. And it does get better, but it's not in the way that your flesh thinks it's going to get better, right? So I'm trying to look into this, and now I'm like, I must have generational curses. I must still have demons attached to me because of the Santeria. I must, maybe my parents did something that now I have demons in my life. And so I'm going down these rabbit holes of deliverance ministry and digging into, like, I'm saying the prayers. I'm truly believing it. I'm watching online deliverance from Derek Prince, who is like, we're going to say these prayers, we're going to do this, and you're going to be delivered from these generational curses. And nothing was getting better. It just wasn't getting better. The only thing that helped me was getting around a group of people who were truly getting plugged into a good church, getting around people who were truly trying to walk the walk, not just be a Sunday service Christian.
Not just have an experience. And
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with having an experience.
No, nothing at all.
But if all you're doing is chasing mountaintop to mountaintop, having experiences without the day-to-day consistency and the walk and the community and the progress in terms of leaning into Jesus, reading your Bible, praying, fasting, all those things, then
Amen.
it doesn't really make a difference.
And so I was just trying to do recite the prayer, get the demons away, and then my finances will be better, because I had a lot of success, relatively speaking, in network marketing, hit the car bonuses and top 1% of the company, and living in Miami, driving around 650 BMW drop top convertible, and then they got frauded 150 million in China, and checks slowed down a lot, right? So I'm thinking that there's got to be demonic, right? There's got to be demons attacking my finances, and it's no. I truly feel that in my case, I can't speak for everyone else who was in the company who felt the same struggle. God was bringing me back to Him into a real relationship, and where I now had to study who God actually is, what a relationship with God is actually like, and not be using God as a means to an end, thinking that because I'm putting my faith in Him that now my life should get better, my sales teams should be growing, and all of that stuff.
So you said while you were doing multi-level marketing, there was $150 million in product not being delivered?
No, so they had business in China, and China they were doing chargebacks on their cards. Massive amounts of chargebacks on their cards, frauded $150 million. And
so people are buying, folks in China are buying the products from the multi-level marketing company, getting the products, and then saying
so
this
it goes
is
even
fraud.
deeper, right? So it was a travel company, right? So there was no products; it was all service based.
Okay.
So there was this bonus you could hit called executive, where you make a bunch of sales. Now you could travel for free on a trip, right? So they would swipe the sales in, book the trip, call a chargeback. So now they're traveling for free, got the commission for it, and now the company is footing the bill for everything.
Who is they? The reps
the
in
reps,
China?
yes.
Okay,
the
so
sales reps.
people in
Yep,
China. Okay,
the
wow.
sales reps. Yeah, they had a whole scheme going.
Wow.
over
And so
there.
that affects everybody who's
Yep. Plus
selling
bad
the company.
investments that the company did as well. You know, it just was a perfect storm, you could say. And you know, us sales reps who were, I had no financial literacy at the time, so I'm spending money faster than I'm making it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I bought a BMW drop top convertible, bro. It's a house payment.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
what am I doing? Dave Ramsey would slap me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Do you in hindsight, looking back at the multi-level marketing thing, which I started in prepaid legal, like my introduction to anything entrepreneur was prepaid legal.
Yeah.
Which I think is called Legal Shield now.
Yeah, it is.
And it was good, but it was Christians who were doing a lot of the motivation stuff, Think and Grow Rich,
Yeah.
How to Win Friends and Influence People, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all that stuff, right? But in hindsight, like I'm glad that it was a gateway to start down the journey of entrepreneurship. But like, you know, there was 5 levels. I made it to the middle level of manager, but very quickly I realized like I should be channeling all this energy into just my music and trying to sell people my music and get people to my shows, right? Not selling people a service that they may or may not ever use.
Yeah.
On top of which the incentive structure was also to try to get people underneath you to do the sales, right? So you got a service, and the cool thing about Legal Shield was there's an actual service, but it was also trying to sell people an opportunity and a dream. All right, it's official. Took some work, took some maneuvering, but we are now offering a virtual ticket to our live podcast event happening August 26th in Oceanside. So if you can't make it to Oceanside, if you're not from Southern California, go to RuslanLive.com to get your virtual ticket to join us live while we'll be streaming the event to all you guys watching who can't be here with us in person. What if the very things that Christian culture often dismisses as worldly actually aren't bad desires? What do I mean by that? It's obvious that the world values things like money, fitness, fame, and immediate gratification. But I like to propose that those natural human desires can actually be redirected with God's words and God's ways of doing things in order to bring glory to Him and serve our neighbor on this side of eternity. And I like to call this very concept God-driven ambition. And we'll be unpacking all of this at my very first live podcast in-person gathering happening August 26th in Oceanside, California. We'll have God Logic Apologetics, Pastor Jeff Moores from Rhythm Church, John Keith, Trizzle Fitness, and hosted by my guy Ray Rock. Lock it in on your calendars right now. Saturday, August 26th in Oceanside, California at Rhythm Church. Click the button down below or go to RuslanLive.com to get more information and get your ticket now. Right? In hindsight, is there any part of you that feels conflicted about the industry as a whole, where like I think they say for every dollar you spend, you get 90 cents back.
Yeah.
You know, so like most people don't make any money doing it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just the way that it is, right? So I look back at it the way I did it as maybe not the most ethical, right? I think you can build a company like that ethically, right? But at the time, like I said, I was just coming out of the streets, you know, just saying screw it to the music industry as well. Like
this was your pathway out.
Yeah, this was my way out.
And to be fair, I do think I think you're right, and I do think there are ways. Like I know, I've talked to Patrick Bet-David about it, and they built People Helping People, which was life insurance, right? And I think if there's an actual valuable service, you're selling life insurance. I'm not a big whole life insurance person, but if they're selling term life insurance, and there's like, there's an actual product. And by the way, you can get licensed as a insurance person. I'm like, okay, cool. But if it's like
leading with the opportunity,
like the opportunity is the product, and we kind of do this little thing over here. I just feel sus.
Yeah, it's anything that people do is gonna get screwed up, right? It's just the way that it is.
Right.
I think that if you can build it ethically, which you can, and I have learned from many people, like my mentor David Peach. This dude, he's one of the most incredible people I have ever met. And when he would see nonsense going on, he's calling it out and bringing it to the company's attention and stuff like that. So the only thing is that it is what's the word I'm looking for? it is the perfect environment for a scammer to thrive. Perfect environment. And
you're collecting people's payment information. You cannot.
It's not even that. It's just I cannot stand carrot at the end of the stick stuff, right? I cannot. When I first started in network marketing, I literally thought everybody I signed up was going to win. Like that's how I thought.
Okay.
And because to me it was easy. I'm like, I'm showing you this service that we never had anywhere else. This product that I was a part of, this service, it got me traveling places I never ever thought about going. You know, I barely left Yonkers. And now here I am traveling all over these places.
What was the product?
It was just a travel club.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a travel club where you could get wholesale travel,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
But so the company that I'm partnered with now that I'm not really building, like I'm not building a sales team, right? This product changed my life. So I have stomach issues like crazy, my bowels, right? But I never found anything. I've went to the doctor a million times, you know, they put me under, did the whole colonoscopy thing a million times. They could not find anything that could help me. I get, after COVID, travel was done, right? So we made a transition to another company. And they were like, oh, you got to try the protein shake, try the protein shake. And I'm like, every protein shake that I have messes up my stomach. I'm not going to do it. But I did it. So I tried it the first day, didn't mess up my stomach. I'm like, oh, okay. Tried it the second day, didn't mess up my stomach. I'm like, okay. Tried it the third day. And I realized that not only was it not messing up my stomach, but it was settling it. It changed my life.
Interesting.
Night and day.
So it's a product you actually believe in.
Yes,
Gotcha.
exactly. So if you're coming into this like, I'm just going to get people no matter what way, I'm going to get them. You're coming into this wrong. Also, if you're coming into this like, yo, I'm be rich tomorrow, you're coming into this wrong. You have to know what you're getting involved in. If you think about it, the business model makes sense, right? I have a website. People can go on the website. I don't have to keep any of the inventory in my garage. I don't have to worry about coming up with the products. I don't have to worry about, promotional products as well. All I have is the website. If you want to buy something, you buy it, and I get paid.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
easy.
It's pretty simple, right? It's just when people are chasing that, and everybody wants something different. You know what I mean? There are some people who are just like, I want to get ridiculously rich.
Right.
I would like to, but it's not my main focus. My main focus is bringing people to Christ. So is my first interaction with you going to be like, hey, join my team? Or is it going to be like, hey, I want to build a relationship with you so I could bring you to Christ? And God used network marketing to bring me to Christ because I didn't know anybody who was a real Christian before. And then here I am in this environment where not only they're telling me to work on myself as a person, because I was super negative. I walk in the room, these fake plants will die, right? Like that's how negative I was.
Why you got to call them my plants,
I'm
man?
sorry.
Yeah,
It's just,
they don't know they're fake, bro. It's Amazon's finest, my guy.
so they are real fake plants. They're really nice. I'm not saying that they don't look good, but it ain't the real thing.
So in doing the network marketing, you're getting introduced to Christians, but you're also getting introduced to prosperity and New Age, and it's just kind of all overlapping and overflowing with each
It's like
other.
a huge mess. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, where was my brain in this whole entire thing?
Well, the tricky part with New Age is this packaging of it, that it's scientific.
Yeah.
And they'll get really into scientific. And the hard part is, as a Christian, we believe that heaven touches earth. We believe that Jesus comes, the God-man, and dies for the sins of the world to create a pathway for us to be in right standing with God and experience a piece of heaven on earth, but also go to, spend eternity and all that kind of stuff. And that's the amazing good news. So we believe that there is a material created order that God set in motion, and then there is a divine God that's divine, and he has angels, and then there's demons and principalities and all that kind of stuff. So we believe that, but the tricky part is that New Age will kind of tap into that, but it'll lean back into us having some form of divinity or magic or whatever you want to call it within ourselves. And I think this is very appealing to even Christians, right? Because you pull verses out like, you'll do greater things than I, right? And so you're thinking like, well, Jesus said it. Like we can move mountains with our brain, right? Like if you have faith, you can move them. You remove all the literary elements from that, which is no one ever literally moved mountains. Yeah, that's a language used, right? hyperbole, all these different things. And I think it could be very tricky for Christians to navigate because, like, well, is it my faith that's doing it? Or is it my faith in a God that is a supernatural being that can move matter and shape our realities to be different? Through because he's all-knowing, all-powerful, all good, right? And so I think it could get really tricky for people in navigating this. And when you package it like, oh, this is science, which it's not, and we can get into that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are led astray into this stuff.
Yeah. So I was so into this whole it's science thing that even when I was a Christian, I remember talking to somebody. I was outside of my uncle's deli. I remember it like it was yesterday. And we were talking about Jesus. And I'm like, well, maybe Jesus was able to walk through walls because he knew how quantum physics actually worked. And he has control over, which essentially he does have control over it. But like, this is how I'm pairing all of this stuff together.
Yeah.
Right. So I always tell people to look into the origins of the things that you believe. This is how I came to Christ, was looking into the origins of different worldviews, right? And one of them is like Hinduism and Buddhism. This is pantheistic worldviews, which the law of attraction believes in. They believe in pantheism. They're a mess too. So there's New Age, New Thought, and then there's Word of Faith, which is the Christian version of all of this, right? So I call the law of attraction a gateway drug to spiritual heroin because it sends you chasing a feeling. And I call Word of Faith and prosperity preaching faith fentanyl, right? So the whole science thing, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot when it comes to that because this pantheistic, you are God, I am God, we are one with the universe is infinitely abundant, all of that stuff. Science does not, it's not in their favor because we have the evidence for the Big Bang, an overwhelming amount of evidence for the beginning of a universe. So if you're going to believe that the universe is infinite, but yet we have all of this information showing us that there's a beginning of the universe, and you're believing the universe is infinite, the universe is God, we are one with God, you're now believing in a finite God because we have a beginning. Not only do we have a beginning, but we have an end. The second law of thermodynamics shows that usable energy is being transferred into non-usable energy. So eventually all of the usable energy that we have in this universe is going to run out. And now you have kind of essentially just a dead universe, right? So to equate the universe with God, it sounds real spiritual and real, ooh, wow, that's beautiful, divinity and everything. But it's you're now limiting God, and
that's interesting. You're hitting it from that perspective because I've always just thought, well, most of science is trying to deal with material equations, right? Not immaterial things that we can't measure and see.
Which is how they shoot themselves in the foot,
right? Because when you start saying things like your thoughts are things, your feelings are vibrations, your words create your worlds. That's nonsense.
Yeah. We also
if we're talking straight science.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking straight science. Now, Jesus being able to interfere with our laws of the material world is what we're talking about. And I would say to some degree principalities and demons and all that kind of stuff, right? Though I believe Jesus is all-knowing, all-present, all-powerful. God's all-knowing, all-present, all-powerful. Demons are not, right? So I think that's the part where I go, wait a minute, no, that's not how it works. Like your thoughts aren't things, your words can't. And the tricky part is when you're talking to people who are very successful and they think it's because of this. And I try to walk them back through and it's like, no, bro, like it's because you worked your freaking face off. It's because you worked your face off. Sure, maybe the visualization helped.
Yeah.
Maybe you believing that you can do it helped. But it wasn't that you thought it and then it happened. It's that you thought it, you believed that you can do it, and then you went and did it for a long time, and then you saw results. So it's like tricky trying to talk to people who are successful because they think they got it. And it's like, no, you're missing the Proverbs. Like the Proverbs is God's way of doing things. It's God's order to things. So it's so close to the truth in ways that it can just deceive people into not needing to be dependent on Jesus because they think they could just be dependent on their mind.
It's self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Me and my wife, we want a Bronco, right? Well, I do. She doesn't really want it, but I want a Bronco. But when we started talking about Broncos, we started seeing them all the time, right? And if you're a new ager and you're believing in the law of attraction, you're thinking that you are now seeing these Broncos everywhere because the universe is revealing them to you. It's getting closer to you. You're drawing them in. But it's actually not. the universe. It's I forget the exact name of it. It's like Boehner-Hoffman or something like that phenomenon in which, you know, we're so bombarded by everything that our brain filters out things that we do not need to pay attention to, so that way we can have coherent conversations and not, you know, drive our car off of a cliff, right? So when you talk about something though, and you bring something to the forefront of your mind, now your mind is just more aware of it. So it's going to notice it in places, right? And this is also why, you know, I have a whole chapter in my book talking about, well, what about the people who attribute their success to the law of attraction? These self-fulfilling prophecies of, you know, I started focusing on this and then I saw it everywhere. And, you know, I felt like I felt the universe was bringing people into my life. No, it's just that now your goals are at the forefront of your mind. So you're paying more attention to when an opportunity arises and say, ooh, I could jump on that, right? And then...
And our brains are powerful in a psychological sense.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So the idea of belief is huge in that it is a motivating contributor to being able to do something. This is in the power of habit, right? So like when people go through the 12 steps in the Alcoholics Anonymous program, which was initially a Christian program, ironically enough, and then they kind of like removed the God of the Bible from it, but they had to have something in there. So they say like whatever your higher source is, whatever your higher power is, because they've studied and they're like, yo, people who have faith are more likely, even if they have faith in nothing, right? If they have faith in their own mind or God or whatever, they're more likely to achieve their goals, right? And there is a component to our brains being powerful, but not in the sense that we're breaking the laws of physics.
We're not. When you start thinking that your thoughts are actually manipulating the universe, you're now participating in sorcery, right? So let's say it does work. Let's say the law of attraction does work, and what you focus on, you attract into your life. We're not supposed to be doing that as Christians. Now, my whole book is about how that's not how it works, right? Because if something's a law, it has to happen 100% of the time. And it's logically impossible for that to be true when it comes to the law of attraction. But so your thoughts influence your emotions, your emotions influence your actions influence your results in life. So I have watched, being in the MLM industry, I've watched people go from broke to multimillionaire and then attribute that to the law of attraction. And I'm like, bro, I watched you build this thing, sleepless nights, 10, 15 presentations a day, driving from Brooklyn, driving to Connecticut, driving to Jersey, building. David Peach, prime example, right? Dude does not believe in the law of attraction at all. This is the person who helped me in my Christian walk. He came into that company, hit the top level of the company in 10 months, faster than anybody else did it. No vision boards, no quantum physics, no putting it out into the universe, no speaking it into existence. He tore down the walls at his chiropractic office so he could fit more people in the room to do the presentations, so that way his team could grow and have a place to be grown. Top level of the company in 10 months, $1 million in rolling 12 months in 1,000 days. Was it the law of attraction? No. He worked his butt off, and that's the X factor of all of these success stories. Is that they can attribute it to the law of attraction all they want. But if I look at your life and I see how you're living, you're waking up at 4 a.m, you're getting your stuff going, doing your meditations, obviously, saying your affirmations, but then you're going to work. You're working your butt off, and then afterwards you want to give away all of that credit to something as arbitrary as the universe and the law of attraction. Doesn't even care if you wake up the next day. It blows my mind. But they are just they're blind to it, because the secret is one of the biggest explosions of bringing law of attraction to the masses, right? When you get that mindset of now I can attract anything that I want, that affects how you're going to live your life, right? Because you're now going to work harder. You have a more positive attitude. You're better to be around. Your associates and family members and potential customers, they want to be around you more because you are essentially more attractive. Because you're, in my case, I was less of a douche. You know what I mean? I was so angry, so miserable, so essentially evil. When I changed, people noticed, right? But I changed because I thought that if I changed the way that I think, the universe was going to bend to my will, right? So
Let's go back to The Secret, though.
yeah.
There was a lady in The Secret who thought she was going to get healed
Oh yeah.
of, was it cancer?
Yeah.
And like refused to go to chemo?
Yeah. So they have,
And then she proclaimed that she was saved in the documentary,
yeah.
right?
In the documentary, Kathy Goodman, she's in the section called "The Secret to Health," right? And in it, she explains how she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she said that no, she rejects that, and that she also rejected chemotherapy, rejected modern medicine, and just was going to beat this with her mind. So she claims that she overcame breast cancer, and she's in the documentary, she's in the book, and this is a powerful story, right? But people don't know 3 years after that came out, she died of breast cancer. So now you got her in the movie telling you and me that if we just think positively about whatever ailments we may have, we can overcome them without any real medical treatment.
Right.
But then this person actually died of the same thing that she's telling us that we could overcome.
Right.
That's dangerous.
It's very dangerous. And it's dangerous because, again, there's a Christian parallel to this called the prosperity, health, wealth, name it, claim it aspect, where my faith will heal me.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a word. It's like a faith in faith instead of a faith in God.
Yeah.
Because
the faith force.
A faith force.
Yep.
Because a faith in God will tell you, take your butt to the freaking doctor. Go listen to the doctor.
I built these people up for you.
Come on.
You know?
Yeah.
I built
Yeah.
these people up. I built up modern medicine
Yes.
for you,
Yes.
for my children
Yes.
to have access to have healthy lives.
Right.
And you're gonna reject it because you think the universe is gonna do it, or because some pastor in a
Right.
pulpit is telling you that if you activate the faith force, and if you don't get healed,
Yeah.
you're told that you don't have enough faith.
You don't have enough faith, yeah.
What a disgusting thing to do.
And this is the dangers of it, right? Like the people could be like, well, you don't know, our brains, blah, 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 blah. You don't know how. And then you go, okay, cool. Maybe I don't know. However,
Yeah.
there's clear depictions in the daggone movie itself of how dangerous this stuff can be, and can be to Christians as well. And I've known folks that, believe they could get healed and all these things, and then, it just doesn't go the way. Or worse, not worse actually, not as worse when you think about it, but I know folks who, they're believing God for their financial breakthrough.
Yeah.
They're believing God for their financial
working
miracle.
on it, right?
And not working on it.
Yeah.
Not doing any of the practical stuff, and you just think there's just going to be breakthrough. And it's like, well, you could think that, you could believe that, you can claim it and claim it, but if you don't have a plan, if you don't have your hand to the plow, if you don't have land to work, it's not going to happen.
It's New Age Christianity.
It's New Age Christianity,
Yeah.
and it leaves people disenchanted and disheartened and delusioned and what is this, and then people will oftentimes deconvert, and walk away from God.
So that's why I have that chapter in my book called Faith Fentanyl, because when you get when you have these false expectations of God, and you have the pastor, in the air quotes pastor, in front of the room telling you how God is and how you can activate the faith force, and if you can't speak any negativity, and if you sow into this ministry, you'll reap 10, 100-fold, telling you all of these things. And then now you have this caricature of who the God of the Bible actually is. And then when you see that God of, quote unquote, God of the Bible blessing other people in the congregation and skipping over you, and you see the pastor getting richer and richer, and you getting poorer and poorer, and you're being faithful with your finances, you're being faithful in your prayer, you're being faithful in your congregation and community, you're volunteering, and all from the premise of, if I do this, God's going to take care of me and give me back everything. And then when that doesn't happen, there's two things that can happen. You either throw out God altogether, or you start walking down another spiritual path, a path towards spiritual heroin.
Yeah. Did you keep up with the Bill Johnson endorsements of Physics of Heaven from Bethel?
I saw they rejected it.
Mike Winger
right?
doing a video on it,
Yeah.
and then them subsequently taking
Removing
it down.
it,
You see that?
I knew of it because of your channel, but I didn't dig too deep into it.
Yeah, and again, Bill Johnson, this is a Bethel Music is a huge name, and here you have stuff, and to their credit, they took it off their book, their site.
That's a good sign.
It's a good sign.
It's a good sign.
But this spiritual heroin is flowing in I mean, at the very least, you got to acknowledge that it's adjacent to Bethel, even though it was straight out of Bethel. But let's just say they renounced it and they backed away from it. That just goes to show how like pervasive this stuff is. It's in a lot of these circles, and it's in a lot of these things. Bill Johnson, the Furticks, right? That the Furtick will kind of like really get close to that line and get real new AG with it, you know, but kind of not fully cross over into the Orthodox stuff. Excuse me, not cross past the line of Orthodox. Yeah. So, but he definitely toes the line there. And so I think this stuff is over. And I think my hope is in the same way this stuff needs to be called out and exposed, I also hope that we can lay out actual ways to do these things properly.
You know, that's so crazy. Me and Gio were talking on the way here, right? Mm-hmm. So my book does a great job at letting you know that believing in the law of attraction is not the way to go. The gospel's in there as well. Mm-hmm. You know, I made sure that at the end, I also have a whole apologetic section of what, you know, some reasons of why I came to Christ, right? Yeah. But I want to come up with a little ebook. It doesn't have to be anything huge, but what can we as Christians do? Yeah. You know, because Philippians 4:8, you know, also be transformed by the renewing of your mind as well. Yep. You know, there are biblical places that you can find that God is telling us to work on our minds, right?
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think the tough part is what I encountered when I started seeing breakthrough. And my breakthrough did not happen in some supernatural, magical way.
Gradual?
It was gradual, dude. I grew up very poor. Me and my mom, you know, were refugees. Mom split up, grew up on welfare. My mom had a bunch of boyfriends, abusive dudes, just a mess of a childhood. So when I became an adult, like I didn't know jack squat about financial literacy, even though, ironically enough, there were classes. I remember my math classes, my junior year of high school. There was classes I was taking senior year of high school, like trying to teach me what credit was, trying to teach me what these things were.
Where did you go to school?
Vista High School.
Wow.
Yeah. And
shout out to Vista High School.
And I didn't listen to any of it. I ignored all of it like an idiot.
But at least they did it, man.
But they
at least
tried.
they did it.
And so, you know, I wake up, I'm 23, newlywed. My wife is 21. And bro, we had over $100,000 in debt. You know, we ended up settling on the biggest account, negotiating that one down, but we ended up paying off over, you know, close to 50,000, 45, 50,000 using the Dave Ramsey baby steps. And I don't agree with everything Dave Ramsey preaches now, especially like 15% on, 15-year mortgage. Like, I think that's nonsense if you're anywhere coastal. Like that might work in like Houston, that's not working in San Diego. So there's some things I disagree with them now, but I think the progress of walking through getting financially literate, living out Proverbs, having a plan, having a budget, having an emergency fund, debt snowballing, and that all of that catapulted me to become more business savvy, which catapulted me to become a full-time creative entrepreneur as a musician when I went full-time in 2015. But what I discovered was I would go to these conferences. I would go to the Man Up conference, right, which was Lecrae. This is like Reach Records when they were really starting to take off. When they're speaking to men, and it was dope. But I would meet these guys, and this is through you probably weren't a Christian yet, but there was a massive reformed and restless phase.
Oh, I've looked into it. I don't believe I became a Christian in like 2012, 2013.
So this is right around that time. Yeah. This is when John Piper's flaming hot. This is when Mark Driscoll was just completely huge. This is
Elephant Room stuff.
Right? So all of this stuff is exploding, and it's resonating with young men, right? It was masculine. There was attributes that were good. It was very logical and lofty, but I would meet these guys because I would be the guy that would do the show in front of 3,000 people and stand at the merch table and meet every single person, even if they didn't buy anything. I just wanted to meet people. Yeah. And I would meet these guys, and like they would know all the 5 points of Calvinism. They would know all the solas. They would know all the theology. They would know all the things. And then their lives would be train wrecks. Yeah. Their finances would be train wrecks. Their marriages would be train wrecks. They'd be hanging on by a thread. And I'm like, dude, there's a disconnect. Like, we know the truth, right? And we have all this lofty theology, but when it comes to how do we practically live this stuff out, it's just a big mess, right? And I think there's a huge bridge there that can be communicated of like the gospel isn't just going to make you healthy, wealthy, and rich and famous, but the gospel, when your heart is transformed and you're born again, gives us ways of God that are so good that even people who don't know God can implement the Proverbs, can implement Ecclesiastes, and see the benefits of it, right? And so I think there's just a huge chasm there, man, that like Christians are struggling with. And that's why stuff like the law of attraction seems so appealing. Is like, yeah, man, I believe in Jesus, I believe in this, but like, I'm still broke.
You're trying to fill holes that are in your life. You know what I mean? And when the law of attraction comes around and tells you things like, if you just focus on abundance, you'll have it. If you just focus on your perfect body, you don't even have to worry about what you eat. Just don't think fat thoughts. You know, if you focus on the spouse of your dreams, you'll attract it. There's no work included in it. It's just your mind has to be there. And we love easy way outs.
Yeah.
So since that's an easy way out, and then you have the self-fulfilling prophecy where you're now focusing on money, you find $5 on the floor, you're like, oh, I knew it, right? So it's just self-fulfilling prophecy. But so going back to when you were talking about the physics of heaven, just that title alone is an oxymoron, right? Because physics is the study of the physical, physical world, mass in motion and stuff like that. Heaven is supposedly immaterial, right? I mean, we know, new heavens, new earth, all that stuff. I don't want to get down that.
There will be a new heaven, new earth, physical
resurrected
world,
bodies, physical bodies, all of that. But heaven in the way they mean it, as far as other dimensional, the spirit realm. So one of the issues that I have with the law of attraction claiming that science proves that the universe is one with God and all that stuff. They dig into quantum physics and the double slit experiment and all of this that says, if an observer isn't present observing this microphone, then it doesn't really exist, right? So all of that, which then leads you to an infinite regress of observers. But they think that because quantum physics is spooky, it's weird, right? There's dozens of theories of why things work the way that they do at the quantum level. But since it's weird, weird equals spiritual. And that's just not it, because quantum physics, although it's not like, us touching this table right here as something physical, it is still the study of the physical universe. So to equate that with spirituality, it's a self-defeating statement, And this is my problem with like the misuse of the word energy or vibrations or frequencies. Because they claim that science proves their worldview, they're now forced to use scientific terms, but they misuse those scientific terms. But to me and you who don't have master's degrees or doctorates in physics, we hear them talking that stuff and we're like, oh yeah, well, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And then we believe things, and then we buy books like The Physics of Heaven, and we start actually believing that these people know what they talk about.
Right.
I think it's something like less than 1% of people who graduate college in physics, even less than that is graduate in something quantum. So whenever
very few people actually understand quantum physics on a tacit level.
I have a whole chapter in my book on quantum physics, right? I call it the Wu-Tang Clan, right? And it's because it's the quantum Wu gang, right? And I initiate people into the Wu-Tang Clan in that chapter. And I'm not claiming to be an expert on this. I'm just saying, guys, look at what actual quantum physicists say about quantum physics, and then look at what these hand-picked quantum physicists that agree with the secret, look what they're saying, and look what the majority of science is saying about what they're saying.
Right.
And for you, so Rhonda Byrne in the book, The Secret, says, I never paid attention in science class, but now when I read complex books on quantum physics, I understand them perfectly. And because I want to understand them, I understand them perfectly. And I'm like, lady, even quantum physicists are saying that we don't understand quantum physics fully. Right. So for you to be, I just have a really hard time believing that New Agers and, people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Rhonda Byrne and all of these quantum physicists, quote unquote people, Deepak Chopra claiming that he knows about quantum physics. I have a really difficult time thinking that you guys have the one true explanation of quantum physics
Sure.
when all of these other quantum physicists are like, nah, we don't think that one's right.
Right. Yeah. That's good, man. So the book is available now. Where can they get the book?
Amazon. Right now, the audiobook is in process of being approved. So it could be approved by the time we're off of this podcast. I don't know.
And you did the audiobook yourself?
Yeah, I did it myself.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I can't stand when people hire voice
So it was
actors.
tough, man. It was tough.
How long did it take you?
It took me days.
Yeah.
Days to record it and then days to edit it. Yeah. And also I recorded it in my mother-in-law's basement. So then I had to put it through a mastering system and all. So I sound a little bit robot-y, but it's still me. Yeah. It was a process, but I wanted it to be me.
Yeah.
And not someone else.
That's awesome. Andrew Tate is going to trial right now. I'm sure if you keep keeping up with any of the Andrew Tate stuff?
Barely.
Okay.
Barely. I just don't I care about his salvation. I don't care about the stuff he's doing.
Sure.
So what's up, guys? Coming to you live from the Bless God Studios, talking to you about my new book, Law of Attraction, a gateway drug to spiritual heroin. This is a book that I wrote with the influence of my wife because I have many friends, family members, and people that I love who have been and are caught up in the law of attraction. And I have been answering their questions over and over and over of why I do not believe in it anymore. And after answering the same question a million times, my wife suggested, why don't you write a book? So after fighting it for a little bit, I conceded and wrote the book. And man, I think that I'm not just saying this because it's my book, but I think everybody needs to read it because this manifestation, law of attraction stuff is not only something that's happening in the secular world, it's bleeding into the church. And you have to know the language. You have to know how to answer some of these objections that people have to your pushback on the law of attraction. You have to know this stuff for not the reason of just being right, but so people can get right and get into a right relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Because this book essentially is an apologetic towards the gospel, right? And at the end, we even have the gospel in there. So do I want people to know about all of the logical fallacies and false scientific claims that the law of attraction makes? Yes. But more importantly, I want to get people the gospel. And if you can get them to read this book, they will get that.
There you have it. And they can find you, John Clash, on all platforms?
Yeah. Just search the name. Jon Clash. Jon. If you put a H, Clash of Clans comes up.
Perfect. Okay. Guys, we're going to go over to our Patreon exclusive segment that's a little too spicy for YouTube. We're going to be talking about John's experience in the webcam business, OnlyFans, how it's destroying a lot of people's lives. So meet us over on Patreon. Hey, if you want to see the extended version of this podcast, completely unedited, consider partnering with us in our online community for as little as $5 a month. In exchange, you get access to these podcasts as we stream them live before anyone else gets to see them. You get access to the replay of our daily after party streams, access to our private Discord server, access to discount codes, and so much more. So help us continue contextualizing the gospel through media, podcasting, and YouTube, and partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Also, be sure to follow us on the Spotify podcast app, on Facebook, and on Instagram. We're constantly posting content there that I think you'll find extremely valuable. All right? I'll see you over there. Peace.